Yeah, you just really boots, mate.
So just talk and then...
You just witter on.
Is that we're on? Is that how we do it?
That's how I do it.
Have you not watched any of my YouTubes, Tim? Come on. Introduce yourself a bit. Tell people who you are.
I don't think we can hear it. I don't think we need to do that. Yeah, that's fine. That's why I've got the best fucking shirt on. I'm not even got me on camera.
Just for everyone that can't see Tim, he's dressed like a schoolboy.
Tim's
He's got black shorts, white shirt, pocket, black shoes, long black socks, and a notepad.
He's doing his best public schoolboy impression.
Cheers, yeah. There's a reason you're that side of the camera. Let's talk about Ruth's race yesterday.
Woo!
Started well. So I saw your coach, Casper,
Yeah.
put on an Instagram post that was a championship best swim.
Yeah.
56:23,
Yeah.
2.4 miles in the med. Is that true? Was it?
Yes, in terms of where I was versus some of the other contenders, I think, like gap to people like Jackie, and again, who like she might have had a bad swim for her, but yeah, even like I'd say gap to some of the other groups. Usually, I think like previous Konas, I've been probably like 10 minutes behind Lucy. Obviously Lucy wasn't there, so the front wasn't as fast, but I was like 7 minutes behind, which...
Yeah, 49 I think.
In that kind of, considering I lost the group that I was with, which would have been the Jackie group, because I made a silly mistake from one of the turn boys and started trying to swim in the other direction. Considering that, I was by myself for the whole second lap, actually quite happy that I didn't lose more time. So I ended up like 50 seconds behind them, I think, which, yeah, pretty good. And I could see people coming out the swim, which is also new.
So on that second, because it's an M-shaped course really, and on that second loop back out, you swam that pretty much solo, but on the first loop you were swimming with other people. Yeah,
so the first loop I was with that group that was just ahead of me of like Daniela, Blamel, Nikki, Jackie, Alice. There might have been some other people in there, but yeah, with that group.
And what was it about that turn book? Because I don't think you were the only one who went wrong at that
So
point.
it wasn't... Yeah, it wasn't the middle bit. It was actually on the first loop, the second turn boy. I thought, I had in my head, I should have done my research better. And it was really choppy, so it was actually really hard to see anything. But I just had in my head that we kind of came round and we turned more back on ourselves. So I kind of came round the buoy and started going that way. And everyone sort of went this way. And then I was like, oh God, I've been dropped. And then I had to get back on. So I spent most of that bit then trying to get back on the group. So that was quite hard. Okay. Then I made it back on the group, and then the girl in front of me then dropped the group, and I saw that too late. And then by the time I reacted, I just couldn't bridge the gap.
Yeah, but all told, a good swim.
Still a good swim, yeah.
And then, so you have the jog out into T1.
Yeah.
How are you feeling at that point? You think, actually, that was a good swim, I feel fine, I'm ready for an exceptionally tough bike course.
Yeah, and at that point, because I could hear the commentators and I could see the girls still getting their stuff on, so I was like, there's people like literally just up the road, I can get up there, then I've got a group. And when I saw some of the people in that group, like Nikki, like Daniela, I was like, oh great, we've got good company, like good bikers. Happy days, I'm in a good position.
Sure. And when you jumped on the bike, did you see Anne at the side of the road at this point? You went past her? Yeah. And your thoughts at that point were, or it just happened in a blur?
Kind of happened in a blur, but it's just like, it's really gutting when someone gets taken out by a mechanical, especially when you're so close to transition. Like you should be able to get a spare wheel at that point. Or something like, you also shouldn't have an issue at that point, but clearly she was really unlucky. But yeah, seeing her out the race, that doesn't change how I view the race, because I'm not really racing her in my head. She's a bit up the road, but yeah, it's just a bit gutting knowing she's not in the race, and it makes it a bit less exciting.
Yeah, do you think Ironman need to look at that for future to make sure that there is some support when people have an early mechanical?
I just think at whatever point you get a mechanical, there should be, especially if you are one of the favourites. Not like and again, not being like certain people should get preferential treatment, but it's worse for the whole sport that she wasn't in that race.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. So heading out then onto the first bit of you're heading out of town.
Yeah.
It's quite flat. Where's your head at? What are you concentrating? You concentrating on your power numbers, or are you just getting settled in at that point?
So at that point, Casper and I had a pretty detailed race plan, I'll say. Like, we'd gone through the whole course, we'd gone through kind of nutrition, what I was going to be trying to think about. So yeah, that whole first section was actually settle down post swim, get the heart rate down, get some nutrition in, get some water in. Obviously the sea's very salty, so like try and just rehydrate a bit. So I was actually not looking at power that much. I was just kind of slowly trying to bridge that bit of gap. I'd actually caught Daniela and Alice in transition, so I was heading out with them. They both went off pretty hard, so I sort of let them go a bit and just kind of paced back on at my own pace. And then I was with them by the time we got to the roundabout to turn right, and then I was like, okay, just kind of settle in, knowing that we then had the punchy bit. So I was like, I want to like settle my heart rate a bit, and then I've got a bit of a kick if I need to get up the hill.
Yeah, because the climbs themselves, I think Kat Matthews described them as you have some warm-up spikes initially, and then there's a slight descent before you really start the big climb, which is slightly split. But that's pretty much a fair way to describe it, which takes us up to about 60 kilometres right before you reach the plateau. So on those initial spikes, what kind of power then was that the time when you start putting the effort in and start putting the power down?
Yes, actually at that point, I wanted to keep everything quite controlled, because again, my main game plan across the bike was actually just be patient. Like, I spoke to quite a lot of the men that did it last year, and they were all like, don't go too hard on the first climb. You need to save something for the top bit and for the second climb. So my whole plan was like, be patient, don't get carried away. If people go off too hard, let them. But equally at this point, because I was in this group, and I was like, they're all riding quite well. I kind of want to be with them. And it was obvious from the forecast we were going to have a banging headwind the whole way across the top of the plateau. So I was also like, company would be nice. So I didn't want to let them get away. So I probably rode hard. Well, I definitely rode harder than I would have ridden by myself up the punchy bit. That first bit I did like 5 minutes at 280 watts, which is much we had tried to put a cap on at like 250 to be like, don't completely spike yourself. But like saying that, there were enough points to recover. But yeah, a lot, I'd say like Alice in particular was riding pretty hard up that first hill. But yeah, it then settled a bit, because you get I think from the bottom of that to then that roundabout is about 25 minutes, where you then turn left to get to Vont, and there's I reckon there's 3 pretty steep bits, and then it kind of evens out a bit, and then you actually get a bit of a flat bit. And I think across that whole bit, I wrote it down, I think across that whole sort of 25 minutes, it then averaged out about 230 watts across it. There was obviously some spiky bits, and then some of the slight downs where I could cruise a bit and not really pedal.
Gotcha. Is it very noticeable then when the big climb then comes in and it starts?
I actually think what was interesting with the big climb is that, because it is such a long climb, actually, rather than really concentrating that much on power, a lot of people you could see were just settling into their rhythm. I feel like when you have a climb like that, you kind of, there's a cadence that feels more comfortable, and just you're not necessarily looking at power, you're more just trying to keep speed. But again, I'd tested it in the week before. I had a good idea of what kind of power I thought I could hold. We'd done some lactate testing at the top to make sure that what I was doing wasn't then gonna kill me for the rest of the ride. And actually I was pretty much bang on. And what was quite interesting was I lost, so Alice and Nikki went up initially, and I reckon they gapped me probably by like 200 metres at one point and Alice was actually off the front by herself quite a bit. But then by the time we got up back towards the top, we'd all come together again. So it was quite interesting of like how people hit things at different points and the different powers. But yeah, so I ended up on the main climb. That was like 230 watts. And that's like about an hour of effort. But yeah, that was basically what I was planning on my like limit being. So.
And what's the watts per kilo for that? Or is that something you're not sharing?
Based on when I last weighed myself, which was a while ago, that is about 4 watts per kilo.
So you said you did some lactate testing at the top. So when you got to the top, did you feel like, actually I've paced this quite well now and I'm ready to attack the final 2/3 of this bike?
Yeah, and by that point, Anne Reichman had also joined us, and I was like, brilliant. I was like, she is one of the people that I definitely wanted to bike with. I actually thought we'd probably come out the swim together, but I managed to have a better than expected swim. And she was also riding really well. But then as we got to the top of the climb, there's a really fun bit where we had actually a bit of tailwind, which is really nice, where it's like a bit of a down gradient before you kind of roll around a bit. And that's super fast. And she's also technically quite good. So I was basically just following her at that point. And I was like, there were points on that where I was like, she's probably riding marginally harder than I want to, but I don't want to lose her wheel.
Yeah.
And then when we got to the out and back bit, we had a little chat and we're like, right, let's just work together, because we then saw that we weren't that far behind quite a lot of the people. We were like, top 10's pretty manageable to get into here. And we knew that we could just work together and try and bring that back. So we had a bit of fun while it lasted before she crashed.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute. Seems like Anne's everyone's favourite, because you're not the first person who's told me that they want her to do really well, but also quite enjoy riding with her and like value her as a really strong cyclist. Is that a fair comment?
Completely fair comment.
What is it about her that's...
I think, like for me, it's the fact that I kind of see her as like a very similar athlete of like, we struggle a bit in the swim and then make it up on the bike and the run. And she's one of those people that like, she's always got a nice word to say to you. She'll always like go out of her way to come and say hi. So yeah, I think she's just a nice person.
Yeah. So there's been on that plateau.
Yeah.
There's bits where you're in a head, you have an out and back section. There's bits where you're in a headwind. There's bits where you have the tailwind. How is that changing in terms of the speed that you're travelling?
Yeah, I wrote this down.
Yeah.
So on the out and back bit, when we had the tailwind, I was doing like 210 watts and we did 48.7 kilometres an hour on that. It's like 6k. On the way back, I was doing 220 watts and we did 34.5 kilometres an hour. It's a pretty big difference. And it was a big headwind. It was not that fun.
Yeah, so tactics, I guess, was super important in terms of, and the race ranger was playing ball and it was doing its job, and did you see any drafts and officials around as well, or not?
The moto was with us probably the whole time we had that slightly bigger group. I don't think I saw it at the top. Then we just had like some media motos. But yeah, there was like one slightly glitchy bit that actually I've already spoken to James about, because he was asking about feedback. But that was on the bit between like Vonce and Tourette's and then the bottom of the climb, where it's like actually really twisty. So I think some of that's just like corners that sometimes it struggles with. But generally I thought like it seemed to work really well.
And through the whole of this section, from the start of the bike through to here, you're just picking people off one by one, and I'm guessing no one's actually coming past you from behind.
Anne was the one that came up from behind. Did anyone else come up? Yeah, didn't see anyone.
Did you have a sense that actually I'm among if not the strongest, among the strongest cyclists on the course at this point? I might be making some more inroads into the lead. Very little information to go on.
I knew I wasn't making inroads in the lead because you could see them, and I knew on that climb, like depending on where I saw people, how far ahead they were. So I could see the helicopter and I could see the motorbikes, and I was like, they're pretty far ahead. And I knew kind of what the gaps were coming out the swim. So I was like, they're definitely putting time in at the front. But I was expecting on the climb that there'd be quite a few girls that were going to climb pretty hard. I was then expecting to hopefully make up some time basically along the plateau. So, yeah, and then I think probably that plateau bit is where being with more people, although like people were pretty spread out by that point, but I think that's probably the one part of the race where the lead group having the media motos probably made a bit of a difference. Like I think I've not actually watched it, but a few people have said there was like 5 or 6 motos with them. Like, so I don't know where they were. I've not watched it, but that was the one bit that it was like kind of pretty much like cross headwind. So depending on where they were, probably made some difference.
Yeah.
But
it's not going to hinder them, is it?
It's not going to hinder them. But then I think there's so much of the course where it's like.
Sorry. Bless you.
There's so much of the course where it like really makes no difference. Like obviously the descent, the motos wouldn't have been anywhere near. The climb, okay, like some of the climb was into a headwind, but you've still got to climb it. So I think marginal. So yeah, I think generally there was not much interference at all. Yeah. A lot less than Kona, I would say.
I was going to ask you about the motors right at the end, but let's ask you about it now. Because you ultimately bike split 5:16, and Laura Phillip had the quickest bike split, which was around, you probably only 5:02. Yeah. But yours was the 4th fastest, I think, or 3rd. Yes, 4th fastest, I think.
Maybe 5th.
Maybe 5th fastest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got that right.
Yeah, it was 5th, because it was
you've
Laura, Kat, Marjolaine, Chelsea.
So you know, right?
I know.
You know
I've looked.
So given what you know about how strongly you biked and how strongly they're capable of biking, does that give you any more insights as to whether the motos might have had a hand at all, or is that just a stretch too far to kind of make those calculations?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard to make those calculations. I think I would expect on that kind of course, I would expect most of them to probably outbike me with my main strength in biking is being quite aero and being like fast on kind of rolling bits. I'd say like my pure power to weight is not that impressive. So on a climb like that, I wouldn't expect to be biking that well, like comparatively. I've obviously ridden much more with Kat than a lot of the other girls, and I know how strong she is, so I was fully expecting her to outbike me. Laura, again, has shown time and time again, she's like one of the best riders. Yeah, so I think probably I would have hoped to have made up more time on Chelsea. Would probably be the only one that I was slightly surprised that I didn't outbike out of those 4.
Yeah. Back to Anne and that crash. So did you see it happen?
Yeah, I was right behind her.
Yeah. So what did happen on that one?
She had one of the bottles of water they hand out in her back cage. I said to her, I'd actually already seen one of them pop out on like a previous bit before she picked up another one, which is surprising because she said she's got like a band to help try and keep it in, but those bottles are shit, so they don't really stay in, especially on nice European roads that aren't the best. And yeah, basically the bottle like bounced out and got jammed in between her frame and her wheel, so she just like couldn't turn it properly, so then her wheel just slid out, and it was so I'm like, she seems to be okay from what she said, because I was talking to her, but she came down pretty hard, so it's obviously never nice to see. And at that point I was also like just gutted for her, and then you're obviously then onto like more of the descent bit, and you have to try and get your head back in the game of like, I've just seen someone crash and I've now got to try and go as fast as I can down this descent. And also at this point Nikki had made it pretty clear she wasn't going to do any help, so I was like, right, I'm on my own now.
So at that point it's you descending. Because that was fairly close to the top of the descent where she dropped off the tracker for anyone trying to follow it, but obviously you saw exactly what happened. How are your descending skills, and how were they yesterday?
They're a lot better than they were. Yeah, they were pretty good yesterday. Like, they weren't the fastest, but I think they were not a million miles away than being from some of the faster ones. Yeah, I think what's quite hard on descents like that in this kind of race, when you're not around anyone, is you actually just have no idea. So like, you might feel like you're pushing it a bit, but just like, I don't know, like and because you can't see anyone, so there's no chance to like check back. So like, I knew that I'd dropped Nikki a bit, but I had no idea by how much. I didn't know if I was putting more time into her or she was catching me, or but yeah, like I feel much more confident descending now than I did. Like when I first came here in March, the first few times that I did the descent, I was like, I'm going to lose so much time here. So yeah, I don't think I lost much time to anyone other than Kat. And I guess Laura, but Laura hasn't put hers on Strava, so I can't compare it directly. But
and did you have any like squeaky bum moments?
No, actually, that was so again, having then seen Anne crash, I was like, I'm not going to take any unnecessary risks. Not saying that she took an unnecessary risk. She was obviously like really unlucky, but yeah, that got in my head more like, you could crash, so don't crash.
Yeah.
Step right.
Did you find concentration's there, of course. Did you find it gave you a chance to recover? Because it's not the normal nature of an Ironman course to have that amount of descending to that amount of time when you maybe don't have to be down. But then I guess perhaps it's also a pedalling descent. So
yeah, quite a lot of it's pedalling descent.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, you can't really relax because yeah, you're either pedaling or you're coming into a corner, so you have to then like get around the corner, and then you're like, okay, now I can get back on the bars and get back down. And then sometimes when you're then coming up, you're like, because it is a longish descent, I was also like, I need to make sure I'm still drinking and eating and getting ready for the marathon. So yeah, no, you're not pushing as hard, anywhere near as hard as when you're climbing, but you're still, it's almost worse because you're like spiking a bit coming out of the corners, then like either not pedaling or braking. And so yeah, so it's a different, like, couldn't be more different than Kona, where you're basically at like one power the whole time.
Yeah. How tricky did you find it not being able to cross the centre line?
Yeah, it's really dangerous. Like, it's really dangerous not being able to cross the centre line. Like and there were obviously times when I did cross the centre line because otherwise I would have crashed. So actually I think the most dangerous thing is probably the chicanes they put in before the bridge. Like, what a stupid idea. Like, honestly, you're coming around like a corner and there's suddenly like a chicane in the middle of the road. And like, they've warned you, but you can't see it. Anyway. Yeah, I just think, I get that they can't guarantee cars aren't coming up the other way. And actually there was a lot of traffic on the course yesterday, another not great point. But I just think you should be allowed to take that risk. If you think that's the better line and you want to take that line, you should be able to take it. Or they should be able to guarantee that there's no cars coming up.
Back to the chicane, it sounds like that was a misstep from the way you described it, and it's something they definitely need to address for future, because I think so. Chicane was the same for the men's race last year. Something they brought up, I think, in the pro briefings. I remember seeing it on one of the slides. But again, in the heat of the moment, you're not necessarily going to be thinking, at this kilometre there's going to be a chicane, and if it's not, it really wasn't well marked in terms of...
it was well marked.
Right.
It's just a stupid thing to do. Like, that corner's no worse than any other corner. Just let us take the line we want to take and slow down as you do for any other corner.
Sure. What's the rationale behind it, do you think?
They said it's because it's basically like a 90-degree bend into the narrow bridge. So they were like, we want to make sure you slow down. So just tell people to slow down, put a sign up, and then people should have looked at the course and know it's a sharp corner.
Right, so we've done the descent, we're coming back down into... so actually there is a bit of a kick-up, isn't there? The descent. Chance for you to gauge how you're feeling, or what was your plan in terms of that climb? Was it put down the same amount of power, for example, as you did earlier in the race? Or? Yeah,
it was basically like, if I felt really good, maybe go relatively hard, but actually I was trying to go probably less hard on that and push a bit more on the flat bits and all the descents I could pedal. So I think I didn't actually look at what I did on that, but yeah, I don't think it would have been more than like 220 watts on that. I would have just kept it steady, and then I was trying to take advantage of my big chain ring and hammer the like nice straight descent as you then come back onto the main road.
And what was your top speed?
70.2 kilometres an hour.
Okay. And what's your top speed ever?
I think there's a German 70.3 I did in Wiesbaden that had an amazing, like, long, gradual dual carriageway descent. And I think I got up to like 82 kilometres an hour on that. But that was quite scary.
Yeah, you didn't want any bottles rattling around in the cage for...
No.
Perfect. And then coming back into town, at this point, you're probably up to 7th place, something along those lines?
I didn't know that, but I knew, or maybe I did. Yeah, actually I must have done, because I counted the people. So yeah, I would have known that I was in 7th.
And are you still pushing, you're getting your head in the space for the run? And are you thinking, is the calf in the back of your mind at this point as well? No. And you're thinking, I'm just going to push it home, because it's still a 10 kilometre stretch or something like that to come back in, so it's still enough time to, you can't, soft pedal in.
Yeah, and we had a banging headwind still at that point. Like, that was probably the worst headwind of the day, actually. Yeah, I wasn't trying to like hammer it. I was just trying to keep it kind of steady, but just trying to be really aero. Because then I was like, I feel relatively confident I'm probably not losing too much time. Because yeah, I was mainly like, I want to freshen up for the marathon as much as you can after that long on the bike. So yeah, I averaged about 200 watts coming back into town, which, yeah, obviously you're like a little bit tired by that point. You've been on the bike for 5 hours, so yeah.
So when we look at the bike leg as a whole, we see your time 5th fastest, and we see what some of the other women biked. What's your overall like verdict on how hard people push that part of the race?
I mean, Laura and Kat obviously pushed it really hard. Would be my verdict, and I think they've both said that as well. Yeah, I think also I looked at. When I was looking on Strava at Kat's, I think her average heart rate for the bike was like 163, which in my view is pretty high. But like, obviously I don't know all her heart rate zones, but if I tried to do a whole Ironman bike leg at that heart rate, then I definitely wouldn't make it through the run. But yeah, I think it definitely shows, like for me it shows like if you are a really well-rounded, strong athlete, like you can push pretty hard on that bike leg and you'll still be able to run. I just think some of the people that sometimes get away, I say like get away, like in the kind of Kona race where you can kind of be in a pack, not have to really push quite hard for like an hour going up a climb or going across the plateau, to then be able to run better. I think those kind of people, like you can't get away with that here, basically. I think like if you want to get one of those top bike splits, you've got to be prepared to push really hard.
Yeah. Did you look at heart rate? Did you use that as a guide for that?
I was trying to, but my heart rate monitor played up a load. I wasn't really trusting it. There were points where I was like, I'm pretty sure this feels about right. Yeah, initially it was telling me, like, I think my graph of like the first like 40, 50k is like all over the like spiky, all over the place. But I've obviously used it enough in training that I know roughly what it feels like, so like I can kind of gauge from that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so it didn't phase you at all, really, at that point.
No.
And the descent, do you feel there was a lot of time to be taken on the descent through good technical riding?
I reckon a reasonable amount. Yeah, I reckon Kat must have put like minutes into a lot of people. Because I saw like even on just like that first section of it, she put a minute into me, and yeah.
She got 6 into mine a day.
On the descent?
Yes, yeah.
There you go, minutes to be gained, which to do that to the girl that lives here is quite impressive.
That's a good point, actually. Marjorie did say that she was very scared descending.
Was she?
Yeah, she's very open about how very scared she was about descending. So I figured she probably wasn't the best benchmark for the descent.
Fine.
But so let's talk about the run. Short-lived, but you went past me at the start of the run, and honestly, I was having a discussion with somebody at the course, and they said everyone always looks superb when they start.
Yeah.
I don't think they necessarily always do, but I did think you looked particularly good when you went out for the run. So
I felt good.
Was that how you felt?
Yeah, I got out onto the run and I was like, great. I was like, I've got all my nutrition in, the bike's gone well, I'm in a great position here. I think at that point I had a 5-minute gap to try and get into the top 5, and I was like, great. Doable. And then, I got through 2K and then my calf just tightened. I was like, that's it, game over. Basically, like, I've had it happen like that so many times before, and I had like a little chat with Casper, and he was like, right, let's just, walk it off a bit, try and get some more hydration and nutrition in. It could just be cramp. I was like, yeah, every time I'm really hopeful that it might just be cramp, and it never is. I was like, we'll try it, you never know. Sometimes miracles happen. So I walked to like the next aid station, got a load of stuff on, tried to jog again just to see if it chilled out, and it didn't. So, like, the options are either try and push through here and like really screw my calf up for a really long time, even though it's already been 3 years, so it can't really be much longer, or I just call it a day, hope I can figure out what's going on and hopefully have some kind of season next year.
Yes. When I spoke to you before the race, you were quite sanguine
about how your calf has been, and you've sort of come to terms with it much more. You said you were way more frustrated last year with the issue, and this year you've been more accepting. Is that we are only one day after the race, so you can feel obviously however you want to feel as well, but is that how you still feel, or is it hugely disappointing?
It is hugely disappointing and frustrating. I think prior to the race, I thought I was back in like quite a good place with it. I think like I said to you, like it hadn't been a super smooth, like lovely 4 months of running, but I'd been okay post Vittoria. I'd had a couple of like little niggles, but they seemed to have gone. And I felt like I'd done everything I could to be in like the best place. And actually like the week before, like the runs I'd done, I was like, I feel good, the calf feels good. I think I've maybe got away with it. And for it to happen so early as well, I don't like, Because had that happened in the last 10K, I could have been like, right, I can push through this. Maybe. It just feels like yet again, like another race that I had a really good opportunity and I just couldn't like make the most of it. And I think because it's now been like 3 years of it since I've had a good race, it just gets really hard to kind of like pick yourself back up and be like, okay, let's go again, let's start another block and get ready for the next race. Because it's like, what's to stop it just happening again?
Do you also get tired about having to explain the post-race as well?
Depends on like who's asking and how they're asking it. Like, I get a bit tired of all the people trying to give like millions of different opinions of what it is. It's like, I've spent the last 2 years trying to figure this out. I've looked at pretty much every option there is. I mean, there must be some other reason, I feel like, because it's not just randomly happening. Or if it is, that's like really unlucky, but I don't like there must be a reason for it that I haven't found yet. So on the other hand, I'm kind of like, it's good for people to feed stuff in because who knows, someone might have the answer, hopefully. But some of the suggestions I get from people, I'm a bit like, I have looked into that. Like, that one's quite obvious, but thank you. Like generally, obviously, people are asking out of concern, and they all mean it in like a really well-meaning way. Like some of the messages I've had today have all been like lovely. So like it's really nice. But it's mainly just really frustrating to have to again be like, it was the calf again.
Was there a particular message that you had after today, or you received after the race that you went, oh, that caught your eye? Oh, that was a good response.
I've had a few of people that have kind of said, like they've been in like similar boats of like ongoing injury or recurring injuries, and the fact that I keep picking myself back up is inspiring to them. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to pick myself back up again rather than go and crawl into the corner and hide away. But
yeah, what do you do when that happens and you pull off after 2K, 2.5K? What's the rest of the day look like?
Yeah, so initially having to actually make the decision, it was probably a good thing that Casper was there, because Casper just sort of sat me down and took my chip off and gave it to someone. So then it was like, right, the decision's done. Like I can't. Whereas if it had just been me, I probably would have sat there for a while being like, can I just keep going? Should I just walk it? But obviously, like with only 2K in, it's like, that's a really long day. And also probably not great to try and walk a marathon on a screwed up calf. So yeah, the initially I was like, maybe I'm just being really pathetic, because I was like, it can't have happened again. So I was like, maybe I've just now made this up in my head, and it's but like I could feel it. So I was like, okay, no, it's definitely not my head. Then I was like, right, now I've made this decision. Then yeah, we did just sit there for a bit, because I was like, I don't really want to face anyone. And I was like, I know as soon as I start going back there, then I'm gonna see people and have to talk to them. Yeah, which is just never that easy, because again, everyone's like, oh, what happened? Then we tried to get either someone from the staff or some medical people to get me a scooter to get back in, because initially I was like, oh, I'll just walk it. Casper's like, it's 3K. I was like, okay, yeah, probably not. Probably not sensible. So then we went and got Lime bikes, which they'd like restricted them in that whole area that day, so they weren't actually working. So I was then on a Lime bike with no electricity. So then, yeah, Casper was basically like pushing me on the Lime bike. And then as we were heading back, then saw like various groups of like my friends and Jack and other people. So then obviously had to stop, have some crying. Yeah, which I think like it was good to kind of have it in a few different processes, like, and with a few different groups. So I had like one of my really good friends from London was there. So yeah, like I feel like you can get slightly different kind of like comfort from different people, I think. And actually what was really nice is my old coach Will was also there, so, and he's obviously been through the previous like 3 years of struggles with the calf, so yeah. And then as we were slowly getting back, also then trying to cheer on some of the people still racing, because obviously at that point there was still a very good battle going on with Kat and Laura. I actually also bumped into Lucy and Reese, so we had a nice chat about calves being really annoying. But yeah, it was then as we were getting back closer to transition, then I was like, right, now I just need to kind of avoid people, because I was like, I really don't want to have to talk to like everyone. I was like, I'm happy talking to like the people that I'm close to, because it's like I can cry on them, but I was like, I don't really want to be crying on random age groupers. But yeah, I managed to get back in. Like the staff was super helpful, so that was good. They like got me into the athlete lounge, which obviously wasn't open at that point because people were still miles away from finishing. Got my phone, sat down, and they opened up the post-race food for me. So I had like a little snack, a beer, more of a cry, and I just basically sat by myself for like 10 minutes. And I was like, right, I can just, just like try and like process this a bit now. And then went and met up with Jack and some other friends for a burger and some champagne. So we're not celebrating, but I was like, I need to drown my sorrows in something. So that was really nice. And by that point, I was like, I need some like proper food. And then my athlete that I coach, Katie, was still racing and racing really well. She was like in the battle for like second or third for overall age grouper. So then got back to be at the finish line to see her finish, which was really nice. And then had to go get my bike and cycle it all the way home. So that gave me like another half an hour to process it all.
So if I say what's next?
Get fixed.
I'm going to go to Turkey and get a calf transplant. heard they go really well.
White turkey.
Apparently they're really good at transplants of everything.
Okay, good.
Yeah, well.
What is next? Yeah, honestly, right, I'm off to Ibiza to support. Obviously lots of people racing, worst places to go and have a chill week. I mean, I was kind of hoping it would be post Ironman and I'd be celebrating, but instead I'll be drowning my sorrows whilst trying to also be support crew. Yeah, that'll actually be, I'm actually looking forward to Ibiza. On the one hand, I'd quite like to get away from triathlon for a bit, but on the other hand, I actually think there's something about going to another race where you're not racing and you're supporting some of your really good friends that is actually quite good, because it kind of, well, I'm hoping, I'll let you know if it works or not. I think it can like bring the kind of excitement and motivation back a bit, like seeing other people go and like smash it and hopefully have good races. Like in particular, really hoping that Indy can kind of put together the race that she deserves after yesterday as well, because yeah, our household was not a great household.
And the week after.
Yeah, and then I'm going to Belgium for the Gravel World Champs, which is going to be really cool. But I'm racing.
Great, and your club won't give you any.
Hopefully not. Like I'm going to have a week of doing nothing now, other than like a bit of floating around in the sea. But yeah, it doesn't. Well, previously it hasn't bothered me cycling, so hopefully it'll be all right.
What can we expect from you at the Gravel World Champs?
Probably getting dropped immediately. Honestly, I've got no idea. I think because nations get to enter people, I actually think it's going to be like a massive mix of like obviously the like super elite of people like Puck, and I think who else, like people like Tiffany Cromwell, like the people that are actually really good and do it as their job. And then I think there'll be the people like me that have kind of somehow managed to qualify. Yeah, I have like zero expectation of other than going and just having an amazing experience. Like one of my sponsors, Classified, have their base there and they've got like a whole team there. So I'm also kind of going for the experience of hopefully being able to like pop into their, I don't know if they've got their factory, but like their main shop and like meet some of the staff and yeah, like just have a good experience. I think like the cycling world seem to put on their world champs really well, so hopefully it'll be fun.